I'd had what was termed and told to me as a breakdown. Men didn't do a lot of talking about their mental health, and I went from that to, oh shit.
Hello and welcome back. My name is Lucy Davis, and we are going out on YouTube today, hopefully all being well, the 23rd of February 2023. It's with my absolute pleasure that I welcome the gorgeous Rik Arron onto my channel today. Rik has been a massive, massive, massive part of my life over the last few years, but particularly in the last 12 months, because this is the man that held space for me to write this beautiful Bible. Look at the size of it. But most importantly, Rik edited this book. He is the man who, although I had the editor's finger, he is the man that kept me on track and really, really did help pull the absolute best out of me. So first and foremost, Rik, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So good to have you on. I know you've spoken at Soul School in Bournemouth back in September, and obviously I dragged you up on stage this time round as well in earlier this month. So you're not adverse to these kind of conversations, but I know that this medium is much more friendly for you because we did it for the last 12 months, didn't we?
Yes, this is how this book came into being.
Exactly. So Rik, let's hear a little bit about you first and foremost, because let's just remember that I have a lot of followers that don't know who you are. They've never heard of you. And they haven't met you in person. Those people that have met Rik in person, I know you're going to love this, and I know you're going to be like, oh, it's so good to see you, Rik. But for those that don't know you, Rik, give us a little bit of an insight into you, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, I guess essentially at heart, I am a writer and a poet. I've published a couple of children's illustrated poetry books, and have a book coming out this year, which we can talk about a bit later. But
So excited.
besides that, I think the best way to describe me is kind of like a storytelling coach and mentor and editor. Because it's quite a difficult role to pin down and describe. But I'm deeply passionate about storytelling, and I love the process of helping other people to kind of find and craft and tell and share their story. That's something I'm just deeply passionate about. But I run a business with my brother. I am a co-founder of a radio station, and so there's loads of stuff going on. But
And a family man.
a family man, a
Which is a
husband,
priority. Yeah, absolutely. An amazing family man, by the way, and a dad. His family is beautiful. It's so beautiful. So the reality is, Rik, you have been living what I'm going to call a normal existence. You're a dad, you're a husband, you're a son, you've got a very successful business, and you've been doing like that normal stuff. And then on the side from that, you've created this amazing radio station in Manchester, which is where Rik is based, called Buzz FM.
The Buzz MCR.
My apologies, completely wrong. The Buzz MCR. So if you want to listen to something which doesn't have any nonsense on it, go listen to that. I think it's an amazing station. I follow it on Facebook, Instagram, wherever I follow. So please do go there and give that a follow. And also, you have this innate gift, and this is something that I figured out with you very early, before we even became like we are now, like brother and sister. I realized that Rik had a gift for being creative in the sense of writing and also music, but I didn't know that Rik had written books and written poetry and things like that. It was really quite interesting. So I was always shown that Rik was going to be somebody that really would help rewrite some of the stories of the past. And I think it's fair to say right now, Rik, you are beautifully stepping into that role as a coach, as a mentor. Like, I wouldn't have been able to produce my book without you. Like, the fundamental is I had the story to tell, and I am good at remembering the dates and the times and everything like that with my story. But you know what it's like when you're saying something, you kind of keep it to the bullet points because you want to do it quick, cheap, and easy. But Rik has this beautiful, beautiful way of extracting how things felt, how things looked, how, to really give the reader what it is that they're looking for. So I guess my first question for you, Rik, is how on earth did you ever step into this?
Yeah, I think actually I told probably the story of how I fell in love with storytelling and realized that the kind of healing power of it. I told this story at the Soul School in Bournemouth, which was how I'd had what was termed and told to me as a breakdown when I was very young, in my late teens and early 20s, which I now know to be a breakthrough rather than a breakdown. But at the time, this was 1992, and men didn't do a lot of talking about their mental health and their well-being. So I didn't really quite understand what was going on. And I found myself in a mental hospital, really. And I was very closed off and very not open to kind of just sat there in the group sessions, didn't want to be there. And what happened was listening to the other people talking and telling me their stories and being vulnerable and open, it changed my life, really. That was the moment when I realized that the power of storytelling can actually help cross boundaries and break down walls. And from that point, probably I was 22 years old, I realized that it was really important to share and be vulnerable and tell my story. And that's how I started to heal and get better. And by the time I left that place, I had friends and made beautiful, friendships with these people because we'd all been dared to be vulnerable and tell our story. And I think that's where it started. And then I just read and wrote. I've always written. I wrote, through college, through university. I just wrote screenplays, wrote books, read. I've just always been really fascinated with how stories can just help us heal. And it kind of went from there. I actually, in my business, I'd found a way of working with artists making short films with artists. And I found that none of them knew how to tell their story. Like if I'd asked them, why are you an artist and what's your story? They would just tell me like, I went to art college and then I went to university. They tell me their CV rather than their story.
Yes.
People do that. They tell you what they've done rather than who they are and how they've got to be where they are.
Or what they don't like. That's another thing that people do.
Yeah.
So can I just lean into this a little bit more, Rik? Because what you essentially did is you had this perceived breakdown, but really you know now it was a breakthrough. And actually what was happening is you coached yourself via writing to find your inner voice, to find a level of peace that would then grow as the rest of your life was to unfold. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And again, I didn't know that that's what I was doing because I just naturally felt that writing. I've kept journals and sketchbooks since I was 15, 16.
I'm a big fan of journaling, as everybody
Yes,
knows.
both are. Journaling is life-saving and life-changing without question. And that's where it came from. It was just that scrolling my inner feelings out and trying to make sense of them on the page. And that was cathartic enough in its own right. But then when you finish the volume of your journal and you hold it, that's a story in itself. It may not be a published book. I've got piles of them over there. Yeah. I've got my piles.
So many of these. David's like, what are you doing, woman? Keeps me sane.
It keeps you sane. But when you finish that book, in that might be 2 months or a month of your life. It's a storybook. It tells you it's who you are.
You're bang on, Rik. What people don't get is this is your book. This is your story, the good, the bad, the ugly. It doesn't mean all of it needs to be shared, but for somebody like myself who's done the amount of traveling around the world that I've done and all of those things, like it's helped me maintain a certain level of memory about what I did and what I got up to, which was kind of how the book came together. I'm going to say as easily as it did, but it wasn't easy, was it?
It's funny because we worked hard, very hard. We put a lot of time into it, but actually the process was easy.
Yeah.
But it was easy because of what you've just said. It was easy because you had done a lot of that soul searching. You came to when we got together and started working, you already had the story worked out because you'd done all the delving, you'd done the soul searching, you'd gone back, you'd done all the emotional trauma work. So actually what you needed was accountability and someone to help you tell it, and also to decide which bits were story worthy. Not story worthy as such, but which are the transformational moments.
Yeah.
Because the book's big enough as it is, yeah.
Bible.
if we would have kept every story and every anecdote in there, because
Would have
there were
been
so
10
many
of these,
times,
wouldn't it?
yeah, there were so many times you'd be telling me and you'd be like, you tell me this stuff, and it's a great story, but we had to be more discerning. We had to say, yeah, okay, great, but is this moving the story forward?
Absolutely.
And if not, then does it need to be there? And there was moments that we did take out those bits that were great stories, and they can give you a giggle, or they were daft, or they showed some different sides to you.
Yeah.
Probably the more debauched moments of your life, let's say.
So Rik, you've gone from having this breakthrough, starting to scribe how to get your life back on track. You've obviously met your beautiful wife, had two beautiful girls, you've, you know, run a very successful business, and then you've started stepping into this role as the mentor, coach, writing your own books. Like, how did that process start to evolve for you?
It wasn't a conscious decision. It was one of those where, like I said, I was working with these artists who would tell me, and I realized they didn't know how to tell their story. So I would ask them the key questions like, well, tell me the first moment in your life that you think was transformational. Where did you decide to become an artist and not just go down the conventional route of getting a job? And then they'd start to think, oh, okay, it was this. And I realized I had a talent and an ability to get people to find those moments in their life that were transformational. And then when you I think I described this at Soul School in February in Manchester, the dot to dots. When you start to put the dots together, then you start to see a pattern emerge, and a story emerges of you. It's not just individual events that are disconnected. You start to see a pattern and a trend. And I started to realize that I could help people to connect those dots. And then I saw the transformation in them when once they'd connected the dots and their story came to light, you could see that it helped them have more purpose about who they were and the work they did. And I did that a number of times with many artists. And that just set me on the path for kind of realizing that this was something that could be really helpful to people, was that everybody wants to make sense of their life and their story. They want to find their purpose. And we're all it's all a bit disheveled and chaotic. All these events that have happened to us from childhood, adult, teenage, youth, and all this stuff's happened to you, but how then do you shape that into a story that makes some sense and actually gives you a sense of who you are and what you're here to do?
Yeah, it's a different level of coaching as well, if you think about it, because I certainly know through going through the process, and we'll get onto that in a little bit, but I know through going through the process, like, it shifted things within me. You kind of like coach yourself. It's a process whereby you can look at yourself in the mirror and be like, oh my gosh, would I go back and do that again? Maybe not. Or, have those moments of real, wow, I didn't realize how amazing that thing that I was doing right there was. And it is a really beautiful, almost like a cleansing process as you step through this. So how on earth did Rik Arron from Manchester end up working with little Lucy from Bournemouth, who was, God knows where I was when we were doing all the book, partly in Surrey and partly in Bournemouth. So how on earth did this happen? How did this come about?
From the very beginning, or just from how we got involved with the book?
Let's start from the very beginning.
The very beginning. We're talking about the dark days of 2020, when the world had gone to absolute heck and hell and shit. And I stumbled across you online because I was, at that time, I think we were all looking online and finding people that were like-minded, that felt like us and thought like us, because we were isolated and we were kind of away from society. We were locked down, etc. And I stumbled across you you were being interviewed. I think it was from Amelia Love at the time, and you just stood out as a voice of truth. You were direct and honest, and resonated really deeply with you. But instantly felt like I'd already known you. You were very familiar, and I think I've joined you. You just started Conscious Conversations, which was like a Monday night weekly group, which you still do, but it was relatively new at the time. And I jumped on there, and I was the only guy, and there was 50 women. I was the only guy on, and I was made very welcome, and the conversations were great. You were sharing not just stuff about what was going on in the world, but the more cosmic kind of spiritual, for want of a better word, stuff. And I just felt that I belonged. This was a real nice community. And then not long after, I think I started your 12-month self-love club program, which again I was the only guy. Oh, actually, I wasn't. There was two guys that started originally, but one of the guys dropped off, and then I was.
Yeah, just on that, Rik, because this fascinates me. So Rik has been on his spiritual path, obviously, since his breakthrough. Like, he's started on his journey of a spiritual path. And what I find fascinating about you, Rik, which is why I want us to talk about this, is you didn't need my program. Like, on paper, you didn't need my program at all. So what was it that drew you to the program?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I've had a beautiful mentor for much of my life, who's been a dear friend of mine, who'd helped me kick my ass and pick me back up and dusted me off, and just, been a real mirror to me and helped me. And I've done a lot. I had done a lot of work and a lot of growth, but I just knew there was something that about the course that I had to do. I can't explain it. I can't and honestly say what it was specifically.
Because
My soul
I remember you saying to me, I don't know why I'm signing up for this, but I know that I need to be there. And it just made me laugh.
Yeah, I did. I probably think one of my famous quotes at the time was that I went from, I think I've got my shit together, which I did at the beginning. I thought I'll join this course because I'm curious and I think it'll be nice and it'll be good. And I thought it was all right. And then I went from that to, oh shit, very quickly realized, there was stuff that I probably hadn't looked at for a while, or had neglected, or just needed to deal with once and for all. And very quickly, those first few months of that course, you unravel to a degree, in a good way, in a healthy way. And yeah, it was very clear that there was work that I still needed to do. And in fact, that was what the best reminder was. We never have our shit together.
No.
And we've always got to be working on ourselves and looking out for ourselves. And it was amazing. And it was, a phenomenal course in 12 months. And the group were amazing.
I remember one part of the program, maybe 3 or 4 months in, and I do a particular process with people, and Rik got such a big breakthrough, and it was at that moment that I knew exactly who he was and what he was here to do, and it was just so beautiful. And watching you evolve and go through that process is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I know a lot of people have been emailing us about this program, so the program actually starts in June. Every year in June. It's a 12-month program, and the waiting list will be open imminently, like within the next couple of days. So do keep your eyes open for that. So we worked together for 12 months on Self-Love Club, and then how on earth did you end up being locked in with me for another year?
I'll tell you how I remember it anyway. You, at least once a week, you would be on one of your lives and you would moan about the fact that you couldn't get your book written. You would just go, I've got to get my book done. I've got to get my book done. I'm just not getting to it. I've just got to get my book done. And I think it was about the 4th or 5th time I'd heard you say that. And I just thought, I'd just finished writing my book, the book that's coming out this year. And I knew the process is not an easy process. And I managed to finish writing my book because of like what had gone on. I wasn't working because of COVID, and I was kind of like locked down, so to speak. I just had time on my hands, and I finished my book, but I knew how hard it was, and I knew the discipline it took. So I just reached out to you. I just said, hey, I heard you talking about your book. Would you like some help with it? Again, probably naively, thinking it would maybe take us a couple of weeks, if that, or a couple of sessions. And you said, yes, thank you. That would be wonderful. Let's be great. Let's go on. And I think the week later we popped on a Zoom, and I had a bit of a plan in my head of kind of like how it could work, but I hadn't ever done this via Zoom before. You were in the south of England, I was in the north. But we just kind of, let's see what happens. And I think that's it. We then, from pretty much every week from that point onwards, with the odd exception, we pretty much, spent time working on the book, and you writing and storytelling, and me helping edit and craft it and hold space for you. And the process, it feels like now when I look back on it, I don't remember that period too much.
Neither do I. Considering the amount of time we spent together.
Yeah, it felt like a blink of an eye now that the book's here and it's finished. But yeah, it was a really effortless process, the process of how the book came to be once we got on the path. Not
Absolutely.
to say there weren't dark and challenging times of you having to
Mm.
trudge through, you know, those memories again. The first few months, in fairness, were pretty heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I kept letting Rik down by keep on stepping backwards. Be like, oh,
Yeah,
Lucy, not again.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So let's talk about the book, because the book is changing lives daily.
yeah,
We knew, like I always knew, I was told very, very clearly that this journey had to be documented and it would change lives. But in all honesty, Rik, when we started writing the book, I remember saying to you, if it changes one life, then I'm happy. Now we are getting messages daily from people all over the world sharing their circumstances, their situations, what's happening with them, how the book has helped gain forgiveness in a lot of instances around things that maybe they have done, but also how it's just raised the awareness on how everything is a gift for people.
yeah,
It blows me away every day.
yeah. It is overwhelming how positive and how incredible and how deep the book is affecting people. Like you say,
Yeah.
if it would have helped one, it would have been great. If it would have, people would have said, "Oh, it's nice story," that would have been great. But it's actually having a deep and profound and lasting effect on people.
Yeah.
You can never know that's going to happen. You can only
No.
hope.
And what's fascinating is a very consistent theme is I picked the book up and couldn't put it down. I've
Yeah,
had maybe 100 people messaging me saying, I'm not a reader and I read it in 2 days. I'm not a reader and I read it in a weekend. I'm not a reader and it took me 6 days, you know. And this is a big, big
yeah,
book, you know, to put it in perspective. Like I've got big hands for a girl, but this, like, look, you know,
yeah.
this is
That's my mum's one complaint. My mum is tiny and she's got tiny hands, and it's just too big for her to handle. But
Well,
yeah, the general
Linda,
feedback is
I'm sorry, Linda, but you know what? We had to do what we had to do.
the general feedback is, I can't put it down, can't put it down,
Yeah,
can't put it down. I mean, we had one lady who read it in 4 days, and she was the first finisher, Lisa.
yeah.
Amazing, amazing,
Since then, we've had
incredible.
people chomping at her time, though. We've had people
Yeah,
finishing it in a couple of days and
three
stuff.
days and 3 days and 12 hours. Yeah, it's amazing because it's we were very conscious from the very beginning. You'd stated that we both agreed straight away that we like small chapters. We like the book to be bite-sized, and you can read a couple of pages and, oh, I need to read more. But if you wanted to put it down, you could, and just pick it up again the next day, knowing where you were up to. And I think that's
Exactly.
helped make it very
I
easy to.
agree. I totally agree. So I think I'm going to share a little bit about what the book is about, because some people might be watching this going, well, why do you think your journey is worthy of writing a book? So my journey from childhood has been very, very interesting. I've got the most beautiful parents. I really have. I've got an older sister whose birthday was yesterday, interestingly enough. Happy birthday, Kirst, if you watch this. And you know, the trials and tribulations of what I perceive to be a normal girl from a small town in the south of England, and the situations that people go through, because I am a normal girl. You know, some people look and they're like, yeah, but of course this would happen to you because you're extraordinary, or you're this, or you're public. And I wasn't that person. I was a normal girl that got born into a normal family. You know, my parents had nothing when I was born. My dad then worked his butt off to make him something and provide for his family, you know, and that will resonate with a lot of men. I had to go through, you know, some certain situations which were traumatic in my life, but not perceived. Like if I said, oh, so and so had a conversation with me, you wouldn't go, oh, that would create trauma. But this is the whole point of the book. We're raising the consciousness on how traumatic situations, or perceived non-traumatic situations, can actually create trauma. And then as my life evolved, you know, my parents got divorced, my sister started abusing drugs. You know, I became insecure in relationships, cheated on people. You know, it's basically looking at every area of my life and of my existence, which has got me from being this beautiful little girl that was born in Bournemouth, who was so happy and so carefree, so connected to God and the divine, to being this girl who shut everything down because of life, then got involved, you know, in the investment banking world, like literally jumped 2-footed into the belly of the beast, became addicted to material, became addicted to self-sabotage, became addicted to, you know, dis-ease in my body, became a victim to dis-ease, which is why I'm so passionate when I talk about health and healing, because I was there. You know, a lot of people will say to me, but you don't look like you were ever sick. Trust me, I was so sick. This book shares it all, like warts and all. It shares about the trials and tribulations of, you know, fertility that I've had over the years, you know, impacting because of the disease that was in my body, the relationships, the, you know, all of the circumstances and situations, till I got to a point where my body said enough is enough. My body burnt out. The relationship that I was in was so toxic that God, the divine, said enough's enough. We've got to whip her out of here. So I burnt out physically. And that's kind of part number 1 of the book, Rik, right?
Yeah.
And that's the heavy part of the book.
Yeah.
But it's the part of the book that if I think everybody will resonate with at least one element of that book. Like every single person, the most awake people, the most asleep people, your grandparents, you name it, every single person I feel will resonate with a piece of part 1. And then it's about I'm going to call it the putting back together. It's the steps that I took to actually recognize what I had done to myself and start to intuitively feel into what I needed to do to pull back and be the version that you see today. You know, I talk about certain things that I took, about certain places that I went to, about certain exercises that I did, you know, certain, you know, journaling. I made journaling a thing in my life. And so I share all of that, and then, you know, go into the element of how I've now created Self-Love Club. Soul School isn't in there because this actually ends in 2018, but you know, it shares the journey that I had to go on, the countries that I had to visit, the intuitive goals, I think is the best way to describe it. You know, the little tidbits that the universe gave me, the crumbs that led me to certain places and certain directions. And you know, it's basically this. If you've ever read the Celestine Prophecy, it is a real life living example of the Celestine Prophecy. And from my perspective, like I read this book and I was like, if this wasn't about my life, like I'd be blown away. Like I read it sometimes and I'm like, this is me. Like, how was I so lucky? And even though at the times I didn't feel lucky, but how was I so lucky for me to be chosen to be this person, to live this journey and create this amazing, amazing story for other people to read? Is there anything you want to add about the book itself?
But just the fact that everything you've just said and the journey you've just described, but the goal from the very beginning, the premise and the reason why we did this and you wanted to do this was to show how ordinary the journey is, and to show, no, it's not a book that's like, this is about me and my story, aren't I amazing, aren't I brilliant, aren't I special? It's the very opposite of that. It's, look, this should mirror back to you, this should show you how ordinary and simple this transformational journey is. It's not as cosmic as it is cosmic, but it's not. In those ordinary moments of transformation, it's dark, it's gritty, it's painful, it's joyous, it's joyful, it's magical, it's all of those in one, and it's very ordinary. And I think the premise was this book should be a mirror to people, to reflect back to them their story. They have stories to tell. They've been on a journey. It might not be the same as yours. It might not involve investment banking and intuitive traveling. It might involve not leaving your own hometown and working in a certain job, doing certain things. But within that is your goal, is your transformational moments. There is a story arch. You may not feel worthy of it yet, but it is in there. And what this book can help you do is to start to find those moments for yourself and go, okay, that happened to me. And I remember when I was 6 and that happened to me. Oh, that's like Lucy's moment when she did that. And all those toxic relationships and those friendships that aren't good for you.
And
it's those little bits.
the
The
little
loops.
loops that we
Yeah.
stay living in. And that's the point of the book. It's to remind you that you are the most powerful creature on the planet. You are your world, and your experiences are shaping your world on a day-to-day basis. And it's about you just finding your voice through me finding my voice, because that's all I did. I found my voice, I found my path. People often say to me, but how did you find your purpose? Like, I don't even know if I've still found my purpose. I think I have, but I don't know, because it evolves daily. So I'm not attached to that. I'm just going, you know what, I'll do what I need to do. I'll show up as I need to be, but I know there's certain things that I must do each day now. So, I mean, I love the book. I love the book. I'm so proud of the book. Some of my family have read it. My friends, a lot of my friends have read it. And a lot of my friends have said, I didn't know this stuff about you. Like, some of this stuff I didn't know. And they're my nearest and dearest. So it's really, really incredible that people are getting an insight into me. But the most important thing, like Rik just said, is it's the unlocking of you. It's loaded with activation codes. It's loaded with, perceived situations of, oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing? But the reality is when you read it, you're going to go, I had a situation like that. I remember when that, and then you start to go and step through the journey, and you start to get aligned to it. So my favorite bit of the book is, I think, the third section of the book, when it's becoming much more intuitive, it's becoming much more spiritual. Why? Because that's where I am today. Going back to part one was challenging, remembering the person that I was and really stepping into the skin suit of the person that was living in so much pain. And she didn't realize it. She thought it was everybody else's problem back then, but it wasn't. It was hers. That was
Yeah,
quite challenging.
I think while you're just talking about that bit, I think it's quite important to say that bit, you've done a lot of work, and I always felt that you had fallen back in love with the younger versions of you. There wasn't, when we were going through the process, I never detected at any point that you didn't like that younger version of you. You'd come to peace with that maybe there's 8 or 10 younger versions of you in that first part of the book. The 3-year-old, the 6-year-old, the 8-year-old, the 16-year-old, and this is the bit that perhaps some people struggle with when they start to write their story in a book, is they don't really like those younger versions of themselves yet. They hate them, or they're scared of them, or they judge them. And that can be a huge obstacle in writing, is because you don't want to go back and see that little person again. And I think it is worth saying that it's worth persisting, that the writing process, you don't have to write a book. It's the journaling thing again. It's if you can start to go and visit those moments that you aren't comfortable with, that younger version of you, write it out in your journal. Because in the process of going through that, even if it feels icky and horrible at first, and you're just full of judgment and hatred for that younger version of yourself, the process of telling that story and writing it is cathartic in itself. The next time you visit that story, you won't feel as emotionally intense about that person. Then love will start to show, because you read that story, icky as it is and awkward as it is, and then you go, that's me. And you start to fall back in love with yourself through the process of writing. And that's something that I think people should soldier on with and go beyond. If they hit that first wall and I don't want to go there, that was too painful to open up that box, that person and those energies are in you anyway, and they're either in you and they're causing problems and disease because they're in there and you're not looking at them. So they're better up out and befriending them anyway, and that's part of what the process of this writing journey can do for you.
Now, Rik, we wrote the book, didn't we? And then we decided to go back and add in some extra little tidbits.
Yeah.
And I really like this, because I was always shown that my books were going to be self-help books, which they are. But then when we put these little extra sections in, it became really powerful. And a lot of people have commented again on these. And we just home in every now and again, we home in on a certain area, don't we? What was the driver from your perspective to add these in?
The key when you said to me at the very beginning was, this book has to be me. It has to sound like me. It has to feel like me. It's got to be authentic to me. And I think a huge part of your existence and personality is the lives and the one-to-one where you're talking to camera every day to people. That's what a lot of people know you for. So I felt that it was important that that was reflected in the book, was that modern day version of you that talks to the reader, the listener, one-on-one. Because a lot of people, when they're watching your lives, feel like you're talking directly to them. They don't think, oh, here she is, and then she's talking to me and thousands of other people. The whole beauty of it is that it feels very personal. And so those sections, they take you, the book's going from like childhood through almost to adulthood, but these other sections, they're spoken from the modern day version of you. They're those little moments where you kind of break the fourth wall and talk directly to the reader. Rather than telling your story, you address them directly. And I just think it just brought this sense of you and who you are now to this story of your journey. I'm glad to hear that it works and that
people really like it, and it's just a little break from the norm, and then you can go and immerse yourself back in into the journey again, which I love. I love the principle of it, and you know me, like any opportunity that I've got to share perspective is one of my favorite things to do. So the book is doing really, really well, but we've just changed some of our international shipping, haven't we? So from the UK, you can order the book very easy. Just click on the link, and the book basically ends up at your door. And we've just been able to take on the same principle for Australia,
US, and Spain.
Yeah.
And we'll add more and more countries as we go along. So that's, you can order for those three countries, US, Australia, and Spain, as simply as you can in England now.
Exactly.
Pay for when you pay for it, it includes all duties and charges. So you pay for it through the website, and the book will arrive at your door. Obviously, it takes longer to get to the far reaches of America and Australia, but it'll get there hopefully, and
absolutely.
With ease and grace, as you say.
Absolutely. And what was I going to say on that? So we decided not to use Amazon. I want to talk about this. I was quite public with my views through 2020, even before 2020, but definitely through 2020 up to this now moment. And I thought it would be a bit hypocritical for me to then go and use a platform of which I perhaps don't resonate with wholeheartedly. So we are doing this book a lot more challenging than it probably needs to be, but we are doing it in an authentic way. And if you know anything about me by now, you will know that I am all about authenticity. I'm not about, saying one thing and doing another thing. So I just wanted to let you guys know, you will not find this book on Amazon. Like if it ever makes its way there, then I don't know how it would have got there, but it's certainly not going to be from myself. We've purely spoken about it a couple of times on my social media so far. That's it. But now we're going to be starting to ramp up. Right, we've got people who literally love the book, and they've given us amazing testimonials. So now how can we go slightly further afield? But we're not going to use the platform of Amazon to be doing that. So if you want to order a copy of the book, go to the description field, and you can literally, like I say, click on the link there. Any issues at all, email support@lucydavis.com, and either myself or Morwenna will come back to you. The last bit that I would like to talk about, Rik, is if people are sat there going, oh my God, I need to speak with Rik. Like, obviously there's only one of you. How is the best way for people to engage with you about whether it be mentorship or coaching or any of that stuff, or maybe they want to run an idea by you to see whether that book might work or whatever? What's the stance there?
There is just one of me, and so I only have so much time, so to speak. But I do one-to-one workshops or prolonged kind of sessions with people if they want to, depending on what the project is. If it's just some people just want to tell one story, like a small event in their life, or other people do. They have a book that they want to get to write. So people can get in touch with me. My website is storyhealing.co. Storyhealing's one word.co, and on there's all the contact details and all the information, the kind of things. If people just get in touch, then we can discuss the project or the idea or whatever it is, where they're up to and what they want to go through and take it. Yeah.
Perfect. So all of the links will be in the description field to be able to get hold of Rik, how you can follow him on social media and support his work, obviously. Now, Mr. Yep. I'm very excited because you've mentioned it a couple of times about the book that you're getting published this year. And it's a very, very interesting one, because we've spoken about this. You shared with me that you had worked with a man, and he'd shared his story before he'd passed about a very, very, and I'll get you to explain in a minute, but a very important piece of his life. And you did this some time back, and now it's getting to the point where the world is actually ready for it, and it actually aligns with some of the energy work that I've been doing recently and bits and pieces like that. So share this book, Rik, because let's start drumming up some excitement about this.
It was another one of those kind of serendipitous, graceful happenings where a friend of mine had rang me and asked me if I would help him tell his dad's story. His dad was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he was getting to his late 80s at the time. And I was busy at work. I wasn't able to help him at the time. But a few years later, when I'd sorted out the stuff with work, I got back in touch and said, how did you get on with your dad's story? And they hadn't got anywhere. His dad just didn't trust anybody. The stories were too dark and too deep and too painful to share with a stranger. So again, a bit like with you, naively and innocently, I said, well, all right, well, I'll bring my camera around, and we'll just kind of like, I'll spend a couple of hours with your dad and he can tell me his story. And if, God forbid, anything happens, at least we've got the story down on tape. And so I turned up a couple of days later with my camera and met his dad, gorgeous, gorgeous little guy, 91 years old at the time. And then I ended up spending 10 months with him every Thursday for 10 months.
It's a 10-month thing with you then, isn't it? 'Cause we were 10 months.
Yeah. I know. And it was beautiful, though. We developed this incredibly beautiful friendship and got to know each other. And he opened his heart to me, and he shared his story, stuff that he'd never shared with anyone else before. Some of those memories he'd never even thought about since the time they'd happened in like the late 30s and the 40s. And his story is profoundly tragic. He was in the ghetto in Poland for 5 years. He lost his father in there. Then he went through 6 concentration camps where he lost his mom, his sister, and his brother. And somehow at age 15, 16, he after being in 6 concentration camps, he was liberated by the Americans and then left to wander Europe as a kind of the wild boys of Europe, they were called. And he told me this incredible story. And I've shortened that story very quickly there, but the ups and the downs and the twists and the turns, but actually, strangely, it's a beautiful book of hope and faith and trust and courage and friendship. It's not a book that's actually mired in just darkness.
Yeah.
But it is a book that reflects the darkest aspects of humanity and also shows the greatest aspects of humanity all in one place, really.
But what I love is that it is a reflection of one person, of their reality through the darkest time of their life. And that is actually what we need to be doing now, bringing the events that have gone past to the surface so that we can actually heal them. So for me, timing couldn't be better on this, Rik.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting because I finished that book again when the world had slowed down and I had time on my hands. I finished that book, but then the subject matter was so dark and so heavy, and the world was pretty dark at that time, that I parked the book. I told Sam's son Robbie, that I'd need a break from it.
Yeah.
And then I never really picked it back up again. Life got busy again. I was helping you with your book. I was dealing with the business and the radio station, and things were going on, and family. And then strangely, without me doing anything, because I kind of almost given it up a bit, I kind of parked it. With the timings of the things you were doing and the energy work that you were being called to do, and the place, we actually spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, just after Soul School. And you and David were planning some stuff. And I was like, that's really weird, because Robbie, the son, got in touch with a few people and put it out. And suddenly stuff's happening with the book, and I'm not even trying.
And it was literally like a domino effect, wasn't it? That came into your consciousness, and then David and I were talking to you, so you started sharing about the book with us, and like we got really excited about it. And then we obviously shared the work that we were just about to kick off and do, and like the world is ready now, Rik, and I'm really, really, really freaking excited for you about this. I'm so excited.
It's a beautiful story, and it's a powerful story, and my promise to Sam, the guy, was to get his story out to the world. And I'm really so excited that finally the world will get a chance to hear it and read it. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gents, please, what I'm going to do in the description field, as I have already said, I'm going to put all of Rik's details, his links to his social media, his links to his website, how you can book a one-to-one session with him or anything like that. Please do go and give him a follow. Please do support him. He is one of these world's treasures. He is your soul brother. He is just amazing. So please, please, please do go and support him. He deserves this more than anybody I know. Like, honestly, his genuine support of everything that I've been doing is just, you know, I just want to offer the same thing back. And also, he does soul school with us. So hopefully, fingers crossed, at one of the soul schools in the remainder of this year, he'll be talking about that book rather than my book, which will be really awesome. Rik, is there anything else you'd like to share, my love?
No, thank you. That was great.
Okay, awesome. Ladies and gents, thank you so much for listening. Please do share this with anybody who you think it may resonate, and I will be seeing you in the next video. Lots of love. See you next time.